Support for Podcast by Night is provided by Midnight Syndicate. To learn more, please visit midnightsyndicate.com. Welcome back, everybody, to Podcast by Night. I'm John.
I'm Jen.
And tonight, for this episode, we are going to finish up with the nuts and bolts of the Ventrue. That's right. It is the end of the Ventrue. But not really. Yay! It's just the episode.
Oh. Sorry.
Yeah, don't. So last time, if you were all lovely listeners recall, we were discussing about how one became a Ventrue, what it was like to sort of be embraced into the society. We talked about bloodlines, their importance within Dignitas and the Familia, and
clan structure. And so now we figured, since we got through all that wonderful, like political poli-sci level stuff, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts, the nitty gritty of being a Ventrue. We're going to talk about the clan flaws, the disciplines, and how they view them, because, well, you'll find out. So stick around, and we're going to start with the super pickiness of the clan, because as you may have guessed, the Ventrue are super picky and particular, and this really carries over into their clan flaw. Yes. So, we were talking about bloodlines and how the Ventrue are obsessed with the bloodlines. Who are you descended from? Who is your family, and who are your people? Where did they come from? And they feel like they're the natural ruler, so we gotta bring in only a certain type of people. Only certain people can be part of the cool kids club of Clan Ventrue. So it kind of makes sense that as a clan, their pickiness even extends outward into their feeding habits. So Clan Ventrue has perhaps one of the most infamous of clan flaws, in that, unlike the Nosferatu, who visibly wear their clan flaw, or the Malkavians, who mentally wear their clan flaw, the Ventrue's clan flaw is that they can only feed off of one particular kind of vitae, one particular blood. And, they might argue, okay, yeah, it's because we have such rarefied taste that, I can only drink the finest of bloodlines. I can only have the best of human vitae to consume. I just like to think that they just became like too particular for their own good.
That's right. They definitely want to flower it up with the idea of, we are but connoisseurs with our delicate palates for vitae. But come on, as we're going to find out, that's bunk, because depending on whatever their particular taste is, it might not be refined at all.
Yeah, your palate may not be all that refined when really all you like to drink is like Pabst Blue Ribbon. So
right, that's right.
It's the only beer I like to drink, y'all. So doesn't mean you have a refined palate, it just means you have a picky one.
Exactly. So along those lines, within the Ventrue bloodline, or the clan itself, this rarefied palate tends to manifest in a couple ways. One can be quite general, and the other one can be ridiculously specific.
Yeah. You could, if you prefer, in generalities, you could have a preference for young women. I can only drink the blood of young women below the age of 25. That's a very general one. It's fairly easy to find young women below the age of 25 to feed from. You can find maybe young virgin women, or young women in love, or empowered young women. You can have variants thereof. But those are still very general. They can still be generic enough that feeding for you as a Ventrue is not particularly hard. You just have to be careful about it. But you could also be, on the other end of the spectrum, hyper-specific. So maybe you as a kindred,
you still have some preferences that are ties to your mortal life. Perhaps you are a newly embraced tech billionaire, so you may have a preference for women who are in the same exact business and have the same exact skill set you do. So if you're a tech billionaire, maybe you like young women who are in the tech industry. If you're ex-military, maybe you have a thing for guys in uniform. It can be super hyper specific too.
With the tech bit, it's not like they're just some gal that's a programmer. She has to be like the CEO. Or if it's a guy in uniform, they probably have to be wearing said uniform.
Yeah. It can't be an off-duty officer. It has to be, hey, officer, nice uniform. A lot of it's mental. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of it's mental. It's the idea that I only like drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon, even though Pabst Blue Ribbon is, not that different from Budweiser, but I only drink Pabst Blue Ribbon. It's a mental game.
And as we've discussed before, even though we can say, oh, it's a mental game, you can just go to a therapist and get out of it. But remember, Kindred have this thing called the Beast. And this thing is just so particular. It can be so nitpicky. And then with a Ventrue, it just heightens it to that level where it's not just a matter of stubbornness. Somehow it actually affects the Ventrue so they cannot gain sustenance from any other source of vitae.
I mean, you, as hungry as you are, you're not going to feed off of anything or anything else because none of it's going to give you sustenance unless you're in a full-on frenzy. But for Ventrue, because of their flaw, they just aren't going to get anything out of it. So in those situations, what a Ventrue has to often do is kind of resort to some, quick and dirty ways of getting nourishment. If I can't find my young, pretty, under 25-year-old tech billionaire who is my feeding preference, what in the world am I going to do? Well, a Ventrue can feed off of other vampires. See, that's the tricky thing about your feeding preference. It's only in regards to humans, really. You aren't penalized as a Ventrue if you're feeding off other vampires. Unfortunately, that comes with it has a whole set of problems all of its own when you're feeding off other vampires.
Right. Yeah, that's the beauty of this feeding off of other kindred to gain sustenance, because that's a particular loophole for quite a few feeding restrictions. But like Jen said, it's a whole other kettle of fish. Because, first off, there's the blood bond. And that can be really dangerous, especially for like a social game, a social creature like a Ventrue. You don't want to be beholden to someone else, especially not of your own clan. I mean, emergency is an emergency, but, what if you start relying on it?
Yeah, I mean, if you aren't careful, you can easily be bound to somebody and they can hold you in their thrall. So they can have power over you. And for a Ventrue, first of all, that's a knock on your dignitas right there, because you aren't your own person then.
Yep.
You are now controlled by somebody else. But now you're someone else's pawn and not at your behest. It's one thing when you willingly go and become someone else's pawn because it's part of a long game. But if you are now someone else's pawn because you entered into a blood bond with them because you were desperate for vitae, well, that's not going to look so good for you and you're going to be stuck. So what do you do? So again, feeding off, for a Ventrue, feeding off another vampire, it may be a quick and dirty fix in a moment, but it's not a long-term solution to the situation if you can't get a hold of your preferred. The other problem that comes with drinking the vitae of vampires is that if you do it enough times, and if you do it for a long enough period, then you have the potential of becoming addicted to vampiric vitae, no matter if you switch it up or not. So even if you're like, well, I'm going to mostly drink human blood, but every so often maybe I'll indulge and have some vampire vitae for a week or a month. Over time, as this builds up, this means that you start becoming more and more reliant and addicted to vampiric vitae. Now, why is this a problem? Well, so let's say you're a Ventrue who's smart and wily enough to say, I'm not going to drink the blood of one vampire. I'm going to drink the blood of all sorts of vampires. That way I can't get bloodbound, right? Smart thinking there. But over time, as you're drinking all this different vampiric blood, your body's processing it. And it's like, nummy, nummy. Vampiric blood is sure richer and more nourishing than human blood. Nummy, nummy. And eventually it's like, but we don't like human blood because human blood is weak compared to vampiric blood. So you become addicted to vampiric vitae and you will no longer be nourished by human vitae. And that can be a problem all of its own because now you have to keep replenishing. Your fellow vampires now become your herd. And that means that puts you in a precarious situation because, you know, either they don't like it and want to bust you for it, or they're like, oh, you want some of my vitae? Well, that's going to come at a cost. What are you going to give me?
So yet another ding to the dignitas.
Yep. And so again, none of the drinking of the vampiric vitae solutions are great long term. They could be used in the short term, but they're really bad options if you're looking for a long term solution to your vitae preference.
And just as a point of naming things, this particular addiction to vampiric vitae is typically called the Methuselah's curse, simply because you are drinking the blood of the other hunters. You are the vampire that feeds on other vampires.
Well, also it's called Methuselah's curse because a Methuselah is in vampiric terminology and in their lexicon. Methuselah is a vampire who is at least 1,000 years old. And when if you're a vampire who manages to live 1,000 years or more, chances are pretty high that you are so old that human vitae usually has a hard time sustaining you and keeping you awake. So it's called Methuselah's curse because it's a curse that is common amongst vampires who are at least 1,000 years old or older. And for Ventrue, they're particularly prone to it. You don't have to be a Methuselah to get this curse. You just have to not be careful about how often you feed off vampires.
So the lesson here, kids, is watch what you're drinking from. And if you're lucky enough to live in a city, make sure that you develop a herd or some other means of getting your particular source of vitae, because it's going to be very important, and protect it, because that's another way your enemies can get.
Yeah, if your enemies ever figure out what your blood preference is, that's a weakness, and they will try and tap into that. You know, hey, let me go adulterate the herd that, you know, Ventrue Bob over there drinks from, because I found out Ventrue Bob likes young, pretty female tech gurus. So that's not something a Ventrue will ever willingly just put out there. Like, usually many Ventrue are very protective about their feeding preference because of this very reason, because they often cultivate herds, and if anyone were to find out their herd, then that's something they can attack.
And speaking of herd, this kind of leads into the next point of the powers of the Ventrue. The Ventrue, being the masters of the art of the masquerade that they are, helps you protect that herd. And in dealing with that herd, i.e. human society, their skill set, if you will, is particularly, geared towards controlling human society from a distance, ruling from the shadows, all of those kind of things that Ventrue have learned how to do, first for survival and then for control over the centuries.
Yeah, the Ventrue have a particularly unique combination of skills. It's not that these skills are unique in and of themselves. The Ventrue are masters at dominate, presence, and fortitude. None of those skills are uncommon. Other vampire clans have those skills, but none of them have them in the combination the Ventrue do. And dominate, which is the ability to force your will on another. Presence, which, you can control basically your charisma. You're controlling the emotions of someone else. And fortitude, which makes you personally strong against any attacks upon your person. All of that put together makes any one Ventrue ridiculously formidable.
Absolutely. And as you can see, like dominate, presence, and fortitude, that particular combination just goes with the, I don't want to say mindset, but the theme, if you will, of the clan itself. It's like they're very domineering, but they're also polite and charming and damn hard to kill. And that's how they like it.
It really, Ventrue are almost built to be influence manipulators. That is exactly what their entire skill set is built to do. They have gifts to cultivate and steward both humans and kindred and kind of push them into systems and paths that they want them to go, either through dominate or through presence. And if anyone should prove to be resistant to the idea of, of, hey, I want you to do this thing, then hello, the Ventrue have enough fortitude that they can withstand pretty much any physical attack that you put against them.
Yeah, I mean, you're a freaking wall of might, a literal juggernaut. So it's like, okay, my pretty words are not, and willpower are not enough. Well, I'm just going to pull out this gun here, keep shooting you, and you can do fuck all to me. So
yeah,
we can do this the hard way, easy way, or the hard way.
I could do this all day. It's like,
that's right.
They're just walking around like they have a preternatural shield around them all the time. Because they do. They're very hard to kill, Ventrue. They're, especially the older they are and the more powerful they are, because first of all, they have their influence networks. And if you manage to get through all their influence networks to get to the Ventrue themselves, then they have all these disciplines that can actually put a stop to you in your tracks. So, and it's part of why they are one of the more powerful clans out there.
And as you probably put together, having this unique combination of common disciplines is not unique among the Ventrue. It's also among their rivals, if you will, the Brujah. And it seems like they're almost suited to combat one another because they both have presence. And, then the other one can, like, I can throw a car at you, but the Ventrue are like, yeah, but I can take it. So it's like even their disciplines are at odds. I just love that sort of tit for tat that those two have.
Yeah, I mean, the Brujah are really the polar opposites of the Ventrue, both in their clan structure and in their clan ideology, but also in their disciplines. They share presence. That's the one discipline they have in common. But Brujah have potence because it gives them physical strength, because the perfection of the body and of strength and, the physical might to back up your words. That potence against fortitude, I mean, they, in a lot of ways, they almost cancel each other out. And then dominate, if a Ventrue can get in a word edgewise to a Brujah and their presence, then they can just force their will onto a Brujah. But, Brujah, they can just run away from that. They have celerity. They don't have to put up with it. They don't have to stay there and listen to it. And their celerity may mean that they're fast enough to get past your fortitude. Who knows? I mean, it really is. The two clans are in a lot of ways built to be in opposition to each other. And when you think about it, they are like, in their ideals, like what they represent and who they are polar opposites. So it makes sense their disciplines would reflect that because let's be honest, chances are high they've cultivated these disciplines over the years because they've always been in opposition with each other.
And given that the Ventrue we've said before, they both use their disciplines effectively to build influence networks. But again, that dominate really comes in when you're dealing with mortals in particular. The Ventrue are so skilled at it that some Ventrue can even just, like, no mortal can resist them.
So for some of them, yeah.
For some of them. So it's just like they're keenly aware of their place in society and kindred society. So again, that kind of gives them the idea that, you know, within the boardroom, within the halls of power, Ventrue are the leaders.
Ventrue can walk in and just be the most charming man or woman who walks in the door. And they can just have their way with a boardroom or the halls of power or what have you. And like you said, they can use their disciplines to use that dominate to help build up their proxy networks. They can use that presence to help charm people into doing what they want. You know, fortitude comes in handy if, you know, somebody decides that they don't want to fall in line with what you're wanting to do, what the new direction is. And if they try to do something about it, well, hey, I guess that gunshot's not going to be as effective as you thought it was going to be. So all of this put together, plus their ability to manage their influences, plus the networks that the Ventrue have built up over long centuries as a clan. I mean, this makes the Ventrue just a formidable force.
Given all of this, it's easy to see and understand why there are so many princes that are Ventrue. They're built for roles of leadership. It's really hard to argue, especially in the courts of the Camarilla. It's hard to argue their abilities to rule.
Yeah, an argument can be made that the Camarilla was built the way it was built because that's the way Ventrue wanted it, because it works well for Ventrue. I mean, everything from the idea of rules and laws and etiquette to status to even, you can see a direct correlation when we were talking about how the Clan Ventrue clan structure is built and how the Camarilla sect structure is built. There is almost a 1-for-1 correlation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one can argue that the Camarilla was built off of the framework of Clan Ventrue, and it was built to favor them in terms of leadership. I mean, even down to the masquerade, because, I mean, honestly, they are the ones who kind of came up with this concept of the masquerade and using proxies to work in the mortal world on their behalf. I mean, they're the ones who pushed that line. It's because they're good at it. And, you know, the argument is, you know, oh, it's for all of our protection to keep us all safe. But it's easy to say that when you're the guys who know how to do it. It's easy to play that game when you're the ones who built the game.
Right,
so,
right.
Absolutely. You know,
this
is why the Ventrue are in power. It's because they already know how the game is played.
That's right. So everybody keep in mind that when you're playing that Ventrue, you were born and built to play the game of the masquerade and the courts of the Camarilla. And you know what? You're just better than everybody else. So there you go.
Yeah, screw them.
Screw them. I'm Ventrue. They don't call us Bluebloods for nothing. All right, Jen. Next segment, again, my favorite part.
So I'm cooler and nobler than everybody else. Those pecs. How do I get to be a Ventrue?
That's right. What are our tips and tricks for actually playing these guys? Well, first off, you just got to remember that you are better and cooler than everybody else in that room. And just kind of go from there. Okay, good night. No, I'm kidding. No.
That's it. That's all you need to know.
That's right. No. You also keep in mind that that's just the attitude that you have to portray. The Ventrue, they don't embrace willy-nilly. They don't, Joe Schmuckatelli over there, just because he owns a business doesn't mean he's going to get the embrace. There's a lot more to it. So definitely keep in mind the particulars that we've discussed about what the Ventrue look for in your character. So either if it's pre-built, try to find those details. And of course, if your storyteller is up for it, have that conversation, and they might be like, oh, that's a great idea. Go ahead and put that in your history. Or if you're building it yourself, by all means, please put those details to use. Do the research, because it's going to really add to that role play.
Because the Ventrue have cultivated this idea of rarity and specificity amongst them, they do tend to look for some kind of specific ideas of what a childer is. And we kind of grouped together some like ideas, some things that a Ventrue would look for in a chilled, but you don't have to play a character who has every one of these. They could have some of them. You could choose how they display any one of these, but these are just general aspects that a Ventrue would look for. And so, like, one of the most primary ones they're going to look for is nobility. And this is a huge thing for them. But then again, that begs the question, what is nobility? Is nobility born and bred in you, or is it something that is taught? Do you want someone who's literally a noble, who has a noble title? Or is it someone who embodies this abstract concept of nobility, of what it means to be noble? So honestly, Ventrue kind of fall on different sides of it, depending on the Ventrue you're talking to. There are some Ventrue who are like, unless you come from an aristocratic line, nah. But some other Ventrue would argue nobility is not born in the bloodline. Sometimes nobility can be taught or can be inhabited by someone who, whose parents were peasants back in the day. So it's kind of up to you as the player, as you're working out the character. What does it mean to be noble? What was it your sire saw in you that they said, that's the mark of nobility?
With that, those two differences, born and bred or taught, that also might factor into where your character was embraced. Because in Europe, you might have more of that old school, old world sense of, maybe old Uncle Louis back in Germany was actually a duke. Well, that can count. But so keep that in mind too, where you want to have your character come from, because that's definitely going to play into the mindset of why you were embraced and what nobility meant to your sire and thus means to you. Yeah.
For example, Americans, we don't have aristocrats, but we do have like our quote unquote nobility. Think like the Kennedys or the Vanderbilts or, any family who's been in major political power, say like the Bushes. Those are kind of our form of aristocracy. People who are descendants from original founding fathers, like my ancestor was, Jefferson or Adams or, not Washington, because Washington actually never had any kids that were from his particular bloodline. Also too, you can think of like, in Boston, they have the Boston Brahmins, New York and Philadelphia have their own versions of that. It's the aristocratic families that go all the way back to the founding of the city. Apparently, I am descended from a founder of the city of Philadelphia, and I don't know how I feel about that, because I'm like, it's Philadelphia. But, you can argue that someone who is from one of those founding lines of a city in America, or even a founder of the country, or from a powerful political family, they might be of noble mien. And that could take the place of being, descended from a duke or a duchess back in Europe. So, that's an option as well. But again, it all depends on nobility. If your sire is like, well, I don't care who you're descended from, I care that you inhabit a noble mien, then who your bloodline is may not be as important to them. But right. No, whatever the case, however they define nobility is going to be how you embody nobility.
Right. And that definitely plays into the second point of bloodlines. The idea of it could be when you were breathing or after your embrace. Because like we said before, certain bloodlines like Mithras, if you are descended from the bloodline of Mithras, there are certain traits that you might think about for your character along those lines. Like what was it, Jen? They were like not sweet talkers. Oh, courage. They were known for their courage under fire. So, you might want to build that character to be keep their cool when the shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to think about is the lineage of your character, and that's very important. Especially, I want to put just put this out there, role playing point, that if you are playing a Ventrue, you probably need to do that research, because even if you have to make up half of it, people are going to ask it.
Yeah, as a Ventrue, as you're creating your character, you want to pick a bloodline that you want to be descended from. You want to pick a group of well-known, well-connected Ventrues, so that when you walk into a city and the other Ventrue are like, oh, so who's your sire and what's your lineage? You can go, oh, I am a descendant of Queen Anne of London, who is the child of Mithras, and on and on and on. And there are a few key cities and a few key bloodlines. Just, quick and dirty notes, like London is one of the major Ventrue strongholds. Berlin's another one. So either one of those city books is really great to go find Ventrue who might be suitable to be descended from. Also to Chicago by Night, which is an old classic. It's an old classic. And there's a whole bunch of bloodline stuff in there too. So you can find it if you do a little bit of research online. You can find some notable Ventrue bloodlines, or heck, you can just make it all up. I will say that there's probably only like 4 or 5 major bloodlines that come from a 4th generation Methuselah. So, but of course those bloodlines branch out. So, I mean, you could make up an entire bloodline that traces itself all the way back to Mithras, and it's not in a book anywhere. And that's perfectly fine too. Just as long as you are, able to recite what your history is when you are asked about it by the prince.
And, depending on how creative you are, that could be a lot of fun coming up with that idea. So again, that's a thing you talk to the storyteller about, because some storytellers might be a little particular about how canonical they want to get, and others, I mean, come on, it's like freaking 2,000 plus years. There's a lot can happen in that time. Like your 4th generation progenitor could be dead by now, but you still come from that blood. So yeah, I mean, just have fun with it. That's a great idea. Just make it up.
Yeah. And that's kind of fun. You can come up with a whole backstory of like, well, my great 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 sire, who was the prince of this like tiny town in Luxembourg, who had all this money, did all these great things, make up an entire family lineage. Heck, half of us do that anyway.
That's true. History's written by the people that tell it. But that leads into the 3rd point, which is wealth and influence. Yes.
So for the Ventrue, if you want to have influence in this world, if you want to be leaders, you would need to have money and influence to do it. So being rich and well connected as a character helps you out a lot, because they're going to be looking for people who have those aspects to bring into the clan. Because let's be honest, even the richest and most well connected Ventrue, over time, that wealth and those influences start to go a little stale. So, hey, fresh blood. We need to get people in here who have new ideas and new concepts, who understand the current business world, who have new wealth and new ways of making money. All of that's going to be attractive to a Ventrue. So, for example, in the 19th century, when those old noble manors that, all the aristocrats used to live on stopped making as much money, guess what? They started embracing industrialists, the robber barons, the railroad barons, because they had money. And then you get into the 20th century. Well, hey, now there's these people who are making money in this new war weapons industry. Well, we can start embracing them. Now we're starting to get into the tech industry. So there's always a new wave of something new that comes into the clan. If you have something that's useful to them in any particular time period, they're willing to usually work with that.
Anything that helps further their ends, Ventrue is typically game for. Right. And so the final point in this section is poise and etiquette. as we said before, that this is something that is ridiculously important, especially in a court setting or a salon, that your poise and etiquette, your knowledge of social rules should rival, if not outweigh, a toreador's.
Yes, because it is bad form for a Ventrue to ever lose their cool or look like an idiot in public. It takes away from your dignitas. I was just thinking about this the other night. Probably many of you haven't watched the show Agent Carter. If you haven't, shame on you, go watch it. But the character of Howard Stark in there, he could not get into this elite, effete social club for all these rich men because he was coming in with, basically a bunch of prostitutes. But, he wasn't being let in the club because he did not have the social grace, the poise, and the etiquette to be a part of the stuffy, paneled, gentlemen's club and, full of rich guys. Ventrue take that very seriously. They're like, the toreador can be the ones running around with the starlets and the prostitutes. A Ventrue is above such things.
This also plays into the idea that politeness is not just being nice. Being a Ventrue, you need to have the poise and wherewithal to be able to negotiate a drawing room or a boardroom with equal grace.
Yeah.
You have to be able to discuss business at one turn and then turn around and have what could be a heated debate at the other without losing your cool. Make sure you know your rhetoric, know how to discuss a point, to the T or however you want to play it. Because honestly, I was just thinking it'd be kind of fun to play that what was it? If anybody's seen Game of Thrones, there's that
I didn't
poor
bring it
guy.
up.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
That poor Tully that was Catelyn Stark's brother, right? He's her brother.
Yeah, it's her brother. Yeah.
This guy, he has the right words. He's got the right breeding, but he is dumb as a box of rocks.
Yeah.
And easily cowed. But yet, upon first meeting him, you're like, oh, this guy's got it together. And then he takes a drink of something and spills it down his shirt. It's fantastic. So You can always have fun with it too. Don't take it too seriously. This is a game. I just thought of that. That would be hilarious to see it at a court.
Yeah, yeah. Your dignitas, your power, the ability to maneuver in a political situation is definitely inhibited if people think you're an idiot. So that is part of having this ability to navigate these social situations with grace, because a gentleman or a gentlewoman, they never lose their cool, and to lose your cool or to lose your temper, it shows that you are ill-bred, first of all, but that you're not capable of handling the matters that are set before you in a calm and capable manner. You always want to show that you have poise and etiquette. So as you're making a character, if you build a character who's built to be that way, then that's an ideal for a Ventrue.
Absolutely. All right, so everybody, that is pretty much the nitty gritty of what to keep in mind when you're building your character as a Ventrue. Now we're going to throw at you some fantastic, fun little concepts just to get the gears turning.
Yeah. Well, first, let's reiterate for everybody out there as you're considering Ventrue as a clan. This was a lot. This was a lot to throw at all of you. This is 3 episodes of stuff, and heck, we're not even to premiere yet.
What do you mean a lot? They can just go back and re-listen to it.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Hear our charming voices. But, I will say this. The Ventrue are perhaps one of the more popular clans for players to play. And part of that is because it has all the structure and support. It's just built in. And so if you're a new player and you're like, I don't know, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm still learning all the ropes, and I'm a little nervous about this, Clan Ventrue actually is a great clan for you. Because they have so much built-in supports. The idea that as a new embracee, you have to go through this whole period of training before you're ever even released into the court actually works in your favor, because then you're bound to whoever your sire is. Hopefully they're a more experienced player, and they can kind of lead you around and hold your hand and say, oh no, this is how this works. And it's built in for new player support. That's just my plug for anybody who's not played Vampire the Masquerade and who's going, oh my gosh, I don't think I could play a Ventrue. That sounds so scary. No, I think this is a great clan for a new player because it has so much going on in there. It just is built in that there's going to be people who are going to be taking care of you and keeping an eye out for you. And it also, the Clan Ventrue, they're built with the idea of mutually working together and with each other towards a common goal. Ventrue very rarely ever work against each other unless you have political factions who are acting against each other, which does happen. But as a whole, they tend to, if you happen to be in this particular Ventrue group, they will support each other and they will help you out. So because the idea of the familia, you are part of my familia, you are my client, I am your patron. It adds to my dignitas that when you succeed, because that's so inbuilt into the Ventrue. It's a great supporting clan for players who are just walking into this, because it's in their best interest as players to make sure you're doing well and that you're having fun and you're engaged in the story.
That's a great point, Jen. The Ventrue are actually one of the few clans, especially with the inbuilt structure that I can think of, that maybe aside of the Assamites, that they want you to work together. You're not supposed to be out for yourself. You can have your own game running as long as it doesn't intersect with someone else's. But yeah, it's as kind of as kumbaya as it gets.
Yeah. I mean, as it gets in Vampire, because it's never quite kumbaya.
Yes, that's true. I mean,
it's more Godfather.
Fair enough. Good point. Okay, so with that, we're going to throw some fun concepts at you, sort of to, get the gears turning about, hey, I could do this or I could play that. That's a great idea. I'm going to make a character based on that. So what do we have first, Jen?
The captain of finance or the captain of industry. This is pretty much a standard Ventrue concept. You're the master of whatever field of influence that you're involved in. It could be banking and finance, or it can be industry or production or transportation or agriculture, resources, technology and communications, what have you. You have an industry, you are the master at it, and there are so many permutations of this, so many. And pretty much any one of them will work for a character in their background, because a Ventrue will take just about any influence they can get. So you're massively skilled at any one of these things. And so all of your key influences and retainers who manage your business interests are all going to be skilled in these areas, and they will jump to do your bidding. So, think of like a Steve Jobs type character, or I'm trying to think of other major industrial people.
Bill Gates,
or even you think in terms of like people who are the heads of major communications companies.
Bob Iger would be a Ventrue.
Bob Iger. Yeah. Bob Iger would be a Ventrue, the president of Disney, because Disney owns my entire childhood. I just give them my money at this point.
Absolutely. Every time I go to the park, I walk up to Mickey and just throw my wallet at him.
I'm like, Mickey, here's my credit card. Just take it. Just take it. Because there's going to be another Avengers movie, or there's going to be another animated movie, and you just take it. You own the Muppets. I mean, come on.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Can you believe that? Anyway, we digress. This next one actually is something I find particularly interesting because I have not seen one of these yet. It is the Lord or Lady of the Manor. Kind of the idea that your dignitas, your nobility, comes from a time not so long ago when society and class were the thing. Like, this goes kind of back to the poison etiquette bit, but I'm just reading this, I'm reminded of the old, like, turn of the century, almost like right at the end of the Victorian era, salon parties among the rich and powerful, because this is where politicians would come to blow off steam. This is where captains of industry would come to hang out. You know, like, say, like, I don't know if anybody's ever seen it, but like the Vanderbilt Manor.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's gorgeous, but it's like an American castle. So the Vanderbilts, you know, if they weren't captains of industry, they would definitely be the lord and lady of that manor, because everybody would come there for their soirees. And let me tell you, if you don't think wheeling and dealing was getting done there, I mean, that was a pool of influence, just swimming.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I mean, again, when you say lord and lady of the manor, this conjures up a very Downton Abbey kind of perspective of the world. And it is. In European terms, it would be, you would think the aristocracy, the lords and ladies, or dukes and duchesses, counts and earls, you know, it'd be those people who are the landed gentry, who have some manor house somewhere in the country where, you know, the king or queen occasionally comes to do a spot of hunting. You know, that is the concept of, you are by rights, because of your birth and because of your class and because of your wealth and your titles, you are above everybody else. And that's just the way the world works. There's you and there's everybody else below you.
Yeah, you're a master of social status, ranking. You definitely know where the classes divide, and you're not mean about it, but you're not.
You could be mean about it.
You could be, but you're definitely there to point them out. Like,
yeah.
If somebody oversteps, you're like, no, take a step back.
Yeah. I mean, the American version, like you said, would be the Vanderbilts, or even the Boston Brahmins I brought up earlier. If you don't know what that is, go look it up. That concept of, our family has been here since the Puritans set foot on Plymouth Rock, right? And we have some sort of social cachet because our family is old and respectable, and they founded this country. You know, for whatever reason, that means you're cool. But that's the American version of that class society of the lord and lady of the manor.
And speaking of the American version, the hungry and ambitious concept definitely fits that. The young upstart, young and hungry.
Yeah. You're seeking to make a name for yourself among the elites, and you're willing to play the game and follow all the rules if it means that you get to gain some sort of political or personal cachet to do it. So this is great for the neonate Ventrue. You are looking to find someone to hitch your star to, and hopefully they'll be the ones to carry you there. You're looking for one of the more powerful Ventrue in the city to whom you can start working with and working for, in the hopes that by working for this powerful Ventrue, that adds to your dignitas and your ability to move forward in the clan.
So next we have the paterfamilias, right? Am I saying that correctly?
You did. Good job, John.
Yay! You're the father of the family. I mean, that kind of is putting too fine a point on it. You are definitely the head of the family in all the senses of the old word meaning, old and new. I mean, yeah, we said it before. We referenced The Godfather. You are the one that, like, you know, you found the house. You make sure that your kids are in positions of power. Yeah, you're the father of the family. Yeah,
you are the patron. The patron.
Patron, that's what I was trying to think of, yes.
Yeah, I mean, everyone is your client, whether they're your chilled or they are your servant. And you build those relationships in the city, and you may even have several other Ventrue who serve you. Maybe they're your chilled, or maybe they're the hungry, ambitious kind we just talked about. And it's this idea of the familia. You're all out to better the chances of the family itself.
The family being the clan at large, clan just in the city, your particular ambitions, whatever it is, you know, as long as we've said, as long as it still falls within the structure of clan politics and you're not hurting anything, more power to you. Because the more dignitas you gain, the better. The better it is for everybody.
Yeah. Next is blood as blue as the Danube.
Oh my God. This is definitely the epitome of your European aristocracy, whether you're a descendant of it or you were it. Man, you thought that the what was it, the Lord and Lady of the Manor was bad. These people are even older than that.
Yeah, you think nobility is baked into that DNA like a fine golden crust. That's the running theory, because you were a descendant of a count or a duchess or some royal line somewhere. You've lived life as a noble, and because you are of the nobility, of the aristocracy, you believe that the mantle of leadership is yours by right and by birth. And because of the honor of being born into the family you were born into, because your great grandfather was the King of England, that means you have an inherent nobility that no one else does.
Right. And as a player, you can definitely play this one of two ways. My preference would be the having the noblesse oblige inherent in every decision your character makes, because it is by divine right that you are here, so therefore you're obligated to do something with it. And of course, the other one is like the Caligula Nero route, where, well, I'm the boss, so everybody has to love me, right?
Well, unfortunately, Caligula and Nero were also batshit fucking crazy.
Well, okay, but they were the only examples I could think.
But yeah, it's that idea, because I was born an aristocrat. That means you have to listen to me because I was born that way.
Right.
You were just embraced into this clan because you just happen to have deep pockets and a useful company. But me, I was born and bred to be a true leader of humankind and of kindred.
Right. Yeah. Think Blah. Privileged plus.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, and next, I know we already mentioned it, the Tony Stark stereotype, the billionaire playboy philanthropist.
You have money, lots of money. Maybe you earned it through your own hard work and initiative, and you made the keen investments, or you were the one who created the product that made millions. Or maybe you earned this money through your own hard work and keen investments, or your own inventions, which happened to make millions. And it was through your bootstraps that you pulled yourself up and you became this billionaire playboy philanthropist. Or maybe you were born into it. And that wealth is the wealth your family possessed, but it's the kind of wealth that makes the gears turn. It oils and greases the complex machine of politics and industry. So you have it and you're not afraid to use it. You can buy whatever you want. Whatever you wish, whatever you desire, you can pay for it. You're just like, oh, hey, Senator, how much will it cost you to give me what I want?
Right.
How much? I have my wallet. Do you take a credit card, or can I PayPal you the money? That's what the billionaire playboy philanthropist can do.
Right. And depending on how you play it, it's definitely one of those character concepts that you might not rise in the ranks of the politic game, but you are definitely valuable. So,
yes.
They might throw some middle management title at you just to keep you happy, but don't fool yourself. You know why you're there.
Yeah. You're there because you are the walking wallet.
Yes.
But they can't succeed without you.
That's right. Oh, and speaking of Senator, the next is the Venerable Senior Statesman.
Yeah. You've been in the room and you know how the game is played. You've played politics so long, it is second nature to you. And you kind of walk the halls of power like you own them. This is where you belong. I am a political animal, and this is my domain. The thing the example that pops up into my mind is, I know I've said it before, but that show Scandal, there was the what was he? If anybody's seen it, it's Cyrus. It's the character that is sort of like, he is the kingmaker.
He is the one that whispers in the president's ear all the things that, because he knows the game inside and out. So as a kindred, that would kind of be where you would live, because, you can't be in politics yourself. You're supposed to be dead. But that doesn't mean that you can't control you can't steer the ship.
I like to think in this example, and it's kind of who I was thinking of, is for any of you who are West Wing fans out there, I was thinking of Leo McGarry. That's the kind of power he wields. He's been in the game so long that he knows how to play it. He knows who the players are. He knows where all the bodies are buried. He's a person who's a political animal, and he knows how to play the game. And that's what the senior statesman concept does. Again, this is a great concept for those ancilla who've been in the middle management level for a while and who are bucking to get up to have even more power, or those elders who are usually the princes of the city. The elder statesman is a great concept for anyone who's bucking for a prince of the city.
I would love the idea of, in a game, to see the very powerful combination of senior statesman concept with billionaire concept.
Yeah.
Because that would be unstoppable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine Leo McGarry and Tony Stark in a room. Oh, my Lord. I think I just have a new fanfic idea.
Oh, there you go. Do it. Write it. All right. And last but not least is one of the, I was going to say true American concepts, but it's anybody. It's anybody that is young, and a young, hungry upstart. It is the young buck. This factors into pretty much everything 21st century.
This is a little different than, say, the hungry and ambitious, because the young bucks are so new. You're on the cutting edge of this world, and you understand the new ways of doing things. You are, these are the tech company startup CEOs. The government lobbyists who are up to their eyeballs in all the modern issues, who, have been cutting their teeth on things like gun control and climate change. These are the people who understand this world as it is today, which for the Ventrue, who are very hidebound, that's critical, because the older Ventrue often aren't as aware of it. They need these young bucks around because the young bucks are their key to the modern world. And that gives them value. Not that the clan will ever tell you in a zillion years that you're valuable, because you still have to go earn your spurs, boy. But you have an incalculable value to them because they don't necessarily understand the way the modern world works, but you do.
Right. So this is definitely one of those things that if you are a millennial, I'll just say it, that is trying to get into the game, and you want to have a Ventrue that is easily identifiable and something that you can just play the shit out of, I think a young buck would definitely suit you, because not only, is it a lingo thing, but it's also a mindset thing. I mean, I could just imagine somebody that was embraced as that, super woke hipster, the guy that made Sierra Nevada, the brewery that's completely off the grid.
Yeah.
That is the pinnacle of I know what's going on. I'm socially conscious. The planet, let's save it. Definitely.
You know how to make a profit off of what's hip and cool and trendy at the moment.
Absolutely. And you know what? We need more people like you. Just saying. Okay, so those are some lovely, fun concepts that Jen put down on paper, and I think they're fantastic.
There's a zillion other concepts.
Of course. These are just some, examples, some templates. Do with them what you will. Come up with your own.
Play and twist them around. You can mix and mash them up. I want to see the Tony Stark, Leo McGarry character.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I want to see this
happen now.
Make it happen.
Boom.
All right, so now we've reached the part of the podcast for our pop culture references. These are either film, television, or literary heck, sometimes even musical examples to sort of give you that flavor of the clan.
Yeah, I mean, these are great things to just, if you are like, how do I venture? I mean, these aren't about vampires, but they're great things to watch so you kind of get the idea of like all the stuff we're talking about. So things to give you, just to kind of juice you up and give you ideas as you're playing your character and building your character.
And you just might learn something.
And you just might learn something. As a future college educator, I approve of this.
All right. Well, first, we've said it once. We've said it twice. Anything dealing with Rome.
Anything. All of it.
Because the Ventrue, their ideals are based in that social structure. So, I mean, we've got things like the movie Gladiator is kind of like an action politic. The show Rome itself is pretty good. That's the HBO show, Rome.
Yes, I've seen it. Claudius is another good one. Spartacus is a good one. Anything that's off the History Channel, that's usually good. The BBC usually has some amazing ones. Or you can just get a hold of me. I will talk your ear off about it, apparently, for a very long time. Yeah. You could just reach out to me on Twitter and be like, so Jen, Rome, what's up with that? And I'll be like, oh my gosh.
Okay, if that happens, then we're going to have to tape it and put it up on the Patreon for bonus content. Jen talks about Rome. You get it it's like one of those great talks seminars.
The TED Talks.
TED Talks. You get it free the first time if you watch it live. After that, you got to pay for it.
Yeah. Anything having to do with Rome is a great way to kind of get you into the mindset of how the Ventrue as a clan culturally they think. So.
And then, of course, coming up in time from that one is anything that is medieval or Renaissance based, not just for costuming, because that's just beautiful, but it's also, those tend to be highly social status movies or concepts or ideas, because, you have the balls and you've got the gentry. A lot of that stuff plays out in stories like
the time period I like to think of really for Ventrue. I mean, really anyone would do, but the time periods I like to hit on, obviously Renaissance Florence with the Medici. Because there's a lot of Ventrue-ness going on in there. There is a Netflix series about the Medici, and it has Richard Madden in it from Game of Thrones, playing Lorenzo de Medici. So I recommend that series because you kind of see how the Ventrue power politic is played in Renaissance Florence. Another good one, anything having to do with like Louis the 14th and Versailles, France, beyond the gorgeous costuming. It's that idea of etiquette and how the nobility created protocol and etiquette as a way to concentrate the power of an absolute monarch. Always lots of fun. I mean, that's a great one to show an Ventrue who is an absolute monarch as a prince. So like all the protocol and why they follow this protocol and it's a way for the king to keep the nobility and aristocracy in line and kind of remind them, hey, yo, I'm the dude in charge and y'all are like emptying my chamber pot. I don't care if you're the Comte de whatever fufu. You are emptying my chamber pot because you're a Comte and I'm the king. Anything having to do with that time period is usually really good.
Definitely, it brings to mind the idea that not only is it how the king or the focus of these stories act, but how he's treated or how they're treated by those around them, depending on their station or status. From the count entering the chamber pot to, the handmaid cleaning up after the person. Yeah, it's definitely so you kind of get an idea of what to expect if you are the absolute monarch or aristocrat, sorry, how you should expect to be treated. And if you're not, make a stink of it. Okay, so moving up, Jen, I love how you pace this out through timelines. This is kind of cool. Next,
that's what I do.
It is. We're coming up with the all of the 19th century, early 20th century, like we said, Downton Abbey before, Pride and Prejudice. Titanic, actually, that's funny that you put Titanic down because that is a good show of separation.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I hated to put it down, frankly. There's a part of my soul that just cried really hard when I put down Titanic, like really, Jen, really.
You get to see, you get to see how the lower berth people are treated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So absolutely. Again, with the etiquette, what's expected of you, even the character of Molly Brown.
Yeah.
Is perfect for the nouveau riche.
Yeah. Because, she is wealthy. She's on the upper decks, but, she was, born like on some in the back country of Colorado or something like that. She got rich because of a mine. So she's not classy and educated, but she's rich. So, that she still would be part of that Ventrue milieu, So yeah, I put Titanic on there because, like you said, it's a pretty, it shows in very visceral detail that delineation.
So during this time period, this is definitely showing the classism and elitism of the upper crust, which is something that the Ventrue would be drawn to.
Yeah. So I also put on the list, if you're up to it, and this probably isn't for the new player, but if you're a player who's played Ventrue for a while and you're looking for a little bit of a challenge or to up your game a little bit, or if you're a history wonk like myself, there are a ton of ancient Roman texts out there that speak to the concept of dignitas and virtue as the Romans understood it and as the Ventrue understand it. Seriously, Cicero could not shut up about dignitas and virtue. Could not shut up about this stuff. And I know this because I've had to translate a lot of Cicero of late, and it really sucks. But in a pinch, if you don't want to read up on Romans necessarily, I would also highly recommend turning to Japanese or Chinese culture, especially some of their films. Kurosawa films deal a lot, I think, with this concept of dignitas and virtue, especially in some of his some of the movies dealing with like noble families or there's ruling families. A lot of Hong Kong cinema has that. Even in some modern like noir coming out of like, China and Japan, like some, when there's crime families involved, there is these concepts of dignitas because, the head of the family and saving face and the honor of the family. So I would recommend anything having to deal with that, because I think once you see that, you really start to get the concept of what it is. Because I think for modern Americans, especially the Zennial millennial crowd, we have a hard time understanding what dignitas is. It's not a concept we use a lot. So I throw those in there because it kind of helps you wrap your head around what is essentially a very hard concept.
And also when you're saying about the Chinese, Japanese influences, I know it's specifically Chinese, but Confucius is up there with the idea of social status and behavior.
Yeah.
So that's something else. Like maybe you want to play. Like we had in one of our games, we had a Ventrue from Hong Kong.
Yeah, we did.
And so he would know that would be his understanding of dignitas.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Next is, again, you mentioned about the crime families, The Godfather.
That's classic.
That's classic. I think all of them. 1, 2, 3. Read the book.
Yeah.
I mean, it is just really in-depth. What I love about that story is that you're able to identify with and hang the star on to, was it Michael, the main character, and kind of follow everything that happens around him.
Yeah, but Vito's story, I think, is the most inherently Ventrue.
The up and coming?
Well, I mean, the idea of the man who has that dignitas and commands the respect.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because Michael, it's the fall of Michael, but the rise of Vito. And Vito is that Ventrue ideal of a man who, has this influence and this cunning and this ruthlessness, but at his core is this dignitas. It is this familia, and he's all about the familia and the dignitas. I mean, the opening scene of The Godfather is the best example in all of cinema of the patron-client relationship.
Absolutely.
You've come to me on my daughter's wedding day to ask a favor of me, and you've shunned me up to this point. So why am I doing this? What's our relationship going to be? Okay, if I do this thing for you, you're going to have to provide me with this.
Right.
So, Godfather, if you're going to play Ventrue, just go watch this movie.
Absolutely. And then next we've got the political drama like movie or TV show. We've mentioned West Wing. I've mentioned Scandal enough. That show even Billions from a business perspective, the business and legal side of it. It's a fantastic drama. Definitely check it out.
Billions is great to show you how the influence game works.
Right.
How do you use influences effectively? Go watch Billions. They show how you can fuck up a person's life royally just by influences.
Right. So pretty much any political drama has something in it that you will probably be able to pick from and use.
And the last one I put on here, just because it's fun, is Crazy Rich Asians.
Oh my God. I can't believe that's all. I mean, you're right. It's there, but
I mean, it shows you how the super ridiculously stupid wealthy live.
That's true. That's true. And you're right. It's like what concept that would fall under billionaire playboy, that would fall under, self-made billionaire. I mean, you're right. It's a fun movie. It's a lot over the top, but it does show you the example of how, if you've got this kind of money, this is how you live.
Yeah. I mean, in many ways, it's not that different from what's the Robin Leach show of the 80s and,
right. Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous,
where, they're spending stupid amounts of money on stupid, crazy things like, golden toilets.
No, yeah. Mm.
Yeah, but it's that idea of you have ridiculous amounts of wealth and you know how to spend it. So, you want to figure out how somebody who has more money than they know what to do with would spend it on? Well, go watch, Crazy Rich Asians or Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous or whatever.
You know what, though? I want to go ahead and point to that. Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. If you can find it, not only is it about, wealthy people spending money that we'll never see, it's also a time capsule.
Yeah.
Like if you want to play a business magnate from the 80s or something, definitely check that out because it's real. It's like it was reality TV of the day. They're not making this shit up. This is how they lived and what they spent money on. So it's a really good, and even like with Robin Leach, some of the questions he would ask, how they answered him is telling. So definitely, if you want to play like a period piece Ventrue, go find that.
That makes me sad. You said that was period piece. I'm like, wait, that's our childhood.
No, a little part of me died when I said. I was like, oh God, I'm old. Okay. All right, so that's the pop culture section, and last but not least is our books to read.
So as always, read your clan books.
Clan books.
Yeah, clan books. There's clan book first, clan book second. Go read your Ventrue clan book. Read Libellus Sanguines, Lord of the Clans. All of those ones that we've already recommended for every other clan. In terms of city books, Chicago by Night, it's a fun book to see how a Ventrue brood that's tied together through power and influence and bloodlines works, how sometimes it works for the good and how sometimes it doesn't work at all. That's also a very classic example of how the Ventrue can have an inter-Ventrue conflict.
It's also a good book for any newbie to read because it shows you how cities are run.
Yeah. It is the basic template for pretty much any city ever built in the World of Darkness.
Right.
London by Night, that is a Victorian vampire supplement, but it is London, and London is as Ventrue a city as you will ever find. There is wall-to-wall Ventrues everywhere. There is a Ventrue, and nobody Ventrues better than the Ventrue there. I mean, they are the cream of the cream. They are the best Ventrue, the Ventrue in London, or so they will tell you.
And also, I'm sure somebody, because I've seen them online, somebody has indexed all of the White Wolf books. So just go and pick any prints out of any book or any supplement that is also Ventrue, and there's going to be a blurb in there about like where they came from, how they got there, and how they run their city. That's also really good research.
Yeah, London has had a couple of Ventrue princes. Berlin has a Ventrue prince. San Francisco has a Ventrue prince. Chicago has a Ventrue prince. Washington, D.C. does not have a Ventrue prince.
That's okay. Because pretty soon that's going to be legal.
Don't listen to anything that they tell you. He is not really a Ventrue prince. But all those other cities have Ventrue princes. So go look them up. Pretty much most princes are Ventrue. So, they're all great examples to look at.
Also, Ventrue are very big on their histories. So know your kindred history.
Yeah, read up on any of the supplements, clan books, myths, legends. There's lots of them. Sure, Jan Petersen, who he is himself a Ventrue, he openly does not buy into any of the myths and legends of vampire history, mostly because he's been mind wiped by, his elders. But go read some of the Nodist stuff. There's, for those of you who are new to this, there's a book called the Book of Nod, which the Camarilla does not recognize. We do not recognize this Book of Nod, but oh hey, it's got some interesting stuff in there. And Ventrue are just enough history wonks to be able to maybe know a few things about it. They may not admit it, but they might know a few things about it. Know the history of some of the more famous Ventrue, like Mithras or Alexander of Paris or Harderstadt, or, I was going to say Marcus Vital. not really a Ventrue.
Okay.
But yeah, some of the more famous Ventrue and their stories. Get to know who the fourth generation Ventrue are, such as Mithras or Alexander or Araker of who I didn't know until I put this outline together, but there he was.
Yeah, I was going to interject that definitely, especially in the modern knights. What would we call right now? In the present knights, Mithras and Harderstadt are very important. So know them.
Yes, very important.
Very important.
So yeah, that's how you Ventrue.
That is how you Ventrue, ladies and gentlemen, and kids and kindred. All right. Well, thank you for sticking with us on this one. I know that this is as Jen said, this is kind of a Ventrue, and the upcoming Tremere are going to be some of the deepest dives that we can do because of the history, because of everything that goes within it. I mean, it's not to say that Nosferatu don't have history, but let's just say if you just want to be the skulker in the dark that knows that what's going on, that's not that hard to do.
Honestly, Ventrue and Tremere, who we save for last because they are the most complex clan. These two clans are probably the hardest clans of all in all of the main Camarilla clans, because there's just so much out there. Tremere in particular is really, really difficult. So that's why we saved them for last. In case you're like, well, wait a minute, why didn't you do Tremere? Well, they're coming. But Ventrue is probably the second most lore heavy clan. I would urge you to don't be shy about that. Don't be afraid of that. Just dive on in. Cause like I said, Ventrue also has built in the structure that allows for them to be friendly for a new player. So if you want to learn the ropes of how to do Camarilla and do Camarilla right, go jump into Clan Ventrue.
Absolutely. Listen to Jen. All right. Well,
Always good policy.
Always good policy. Listen to Jen. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We had a lot of fun doing this and putting it together. We're definitely going to keep you up to date. I apologize for not kind of playing the feeds like I should have been doing, but hey, we're still learning how to do all this, even though this is, how many episodes is this?
I've lost track.
Me too. But we just love doing it, and we thank you guys for listening, and we hope you really enjoy it. So until next time, my name's John.
I'm Jen.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
And if you want to get a hold of us outside of our normal podcast hours, you can find us at Podcast by Night on Facebook. You can also find us on Twitter at By Night Podcast, or you can email us with any questions, thoughts, opinions, anything you want to communicate to us. You can do that at podcastbynight@gmail.com.